What's up, you guys? This is Rob from the Gay Guy Plays, and today on the Daily Grind, we're gonna have a little chat about Titania and Nyx's recent reworks. Now, first and foremost, I did want to apologize for the fact that it took me so long to get this video out to you guys. However, I did want to take my time and play with each of these individual frames to really get a feel for how the tweaks affected them. Some for the much better, and some for the completely unplayable. So as you can tell, there is gonna be a bit of salt at the very beginning of this video. In fact, I went ahead and pushed this recording to the very end of the night because of the fact that I wanted to kind of calm myself a little bit so I can provide some better constructive feedback. So as you can tell, I'm not very fond of the recent changes that they went ahead and did to Titania. In fact, Titania was going to be one of my top 5 frames of 2018. However, I find her completely unplayable now. She used to be the queen of the fairies, now she's the queen of the garbage can, which is where she's going to be staying until they make some much needed adjustments. So for those of you guys who have never played Titania before, one of my favorite things about her, I think the biggest draw to her kit, is her Razor Wing. Her ability to go into this mini arc wing and fly through missions and mow down enemies, just the amount of mobility she had was absolutely incredible. However, they absolutely killed that by adding in an innate 10-meter vacuum. They literally forced this vacuum on us, which is completely and utterly just, it doesn't jive with channeled abilities. So for those of you guys who don't know exactly why these two items don't mesh, especially for some of the newer players or some of the less experienced players out there, the big reason why this is a downside to Razor Wing or any channeled ability, to be completely honest with you, is because of how the mechanics are. So, as you guys know, your channeled abilities slowly drain energy over time, taking, 1 energy point per second. Let's just use that as a ballpark number. So what happens is the second that you have any lost energy, so let's say you lose 1 energy, vacuum kicks in and goes ahead and sucks in the nearest energy orb to you. So the problem with that is if you tend to stay topped off or fairly efficient with your energy, what ends up happening is you'll only gain 1 point of energy when that vacuum sucks in that energy orb. So if you don't see the issue here, you have a 25 energy orb at the least, right? Which will be about 25 seconds of whatever channeled ability you have. However, with vacuum will suck that energy in as soon as you have any missing energy whatsoever. So instead of getting 25 seconds, you'll maybe get 1 second. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll get 5 seconds. But since they have such an aggressive vacuum range on Titania, what ends up happening is now if you want to manage your energy manually, you literally have to stay away from parts of the map so that you don't accidentally suck that up too soon. And that to me is completely and utterly bonkers. I went ahead and tried playing around with it, and I found that I had to stay away from certain segments of the map just because I wanted to be able to make sure that I was being efficient with my energy usage. Now, of course, some of you guys are out there like, oh, that's not a big deal. Well, it is when you have more advanced things like Arcane Energize. So for those of you guys who don't know, Arcane Energize has a 40% chance to proc an extra 100 bonus energy AoE around you, which includes you. So now, instead of missing out on 25 seconds of energy, or 25 seconds of your Razor Wing, and getting maybe 1 or 2 points of seconds, you could be missing out on 125 seconds of your Razor Wing instead. Because, we tend to couple things like, like Prime Flow along with it. So you have a larger energy pool. So you could go ahead and use your energy and then go ahead and pick up those energy orbs, and you'll have a big battery to kind of feast on instead of just a couple seconds. Which means that literally there is no way to effectively manage your energy manually with this new Razor Wing. Now, my big issue with this is when you do a rework, one of the things that you don't want to do is you don't want to piss off the people that are already playing that Warframe. The only thing that you're trying to do is bring in new players in to play that Warframe and not drive away the old players at the same time. If you drive away the old players, then you know that that's a bad rework. So for me, I'm just like, I can't deal with her. I played her and I was like, this is legitimately unplayable for me, so I'm just gonna put her away. In fact, what I'm gonna do real quick is, as I finish up this part of my review of the reworks, we're just gonna go ahead and black out the screen, because legitimately I feel like we need a Titania blackout at the moment. Like, I won't be covering any fashion frame for her, I'll be going ahead and privating all my builds for her, we won't cover the deluxe skin, we won't cover any Tenogen skin, we're just gonna pretend that she does not exist until something is done about this, because legitimately there are some really great solutions that they could have introduced instead of the 10-meter vacuum range. Now, I do understand she is a smaller, like, little hitbox, so, you know, introducing a vacuum probably would have been a bit of a better draw for some people. So what I'd love to see is the 3-meter vacuum gone ahead and instilled in her, because 3 meters is very manageable. Like, I'm not going to complain over that. And if people have vacuum on any of their companions, then they can go ahead and push that 3-meter range out into, you know, the 10 or 11-meter ranges that the normal vacuums have. But to force people to have to use a 10-meter vacuum is absolute insanity. So unfortunately, I won't be touching her. I'm just going to pretend she doesn't exist. It's basically off with the queen's head at the moment. And I know she had a recent alternate helmet, but we ain't going to see that here anytime soon. So unfortunately, that is a big pass. Titania currently canceled. You know who's not canceled. You know who's uncanceled though. And this is where we get to the brighter spot of the review. Miss Nyx. Okay. Let me tell you right now. Well, I'll be frank. I don't think that it was the massive rework in the world, but I do feel like it makes her much more usable in like the smallest of slightest ways. So one of the big draws that Nyx has is she has a whole lot of control and she can turn enemies on each other. And this is one of the things that I absolutely loved about her. So being able to introduce her new second ability to her kit, it's just juicy. But let's go ahead and start off chronologically. So the first thing that we have is, of course, mind control, and they introduced a new like 4-second I guess you would call it build-up timer, where you would be able to shoot your mind control target and give them a big damage boost. Now, to be honest with you, I hadn't optimized this, so I wasn't, you know, bringing in like weapons that specifically targeted them and made them super powerful. I prefer to, you know, have just good weapons on me that I can use as Nyx. So I just went ahead and did that, and I mean, we were getting pretty hefty damage numbers. I'm actually very curious to see what the calculations are gonna be made out with her Mind Freak augment, because as you guys know, Mind Freak adds in a like 500% damage boost to the enemy, and that's also affected by power strength too, I believe. So adding that plus the other one, I don't know if they're going to be additive or if they're going to be multiplicative. If they're going to be multiplicative, that's just going to be nasty and super cool. But if I'm going to be frank with you, while I do like the changes to mind control, I personally don't use mind control very much at all. It's kind of like an added nice little bonus, but I do like, you know, the additional damage that your little mind control target can do, because it couples so well with her next ability. Yes, her new psychic bolts. Ooh, this one is a good one, and I found myself using this a lot more. So I went ahead and took her out on some fissure missions, and wow, she was really fantastic. She felt like, especially with Assimilate on, she felt just like indestructible, and she was able to kind of like clear a path using her psychic bolts. So now you've got like this kind of really offensively powerful enemy beside you. There's all this chaos going around, and you're like, psychic bolts, and then all of a sudden you can just focus fire into like, you know, down one hallway and just clear out all those enemies at once. Or if you've got some really nice tight groupings of enemies, just psychic bolt into that grouping of enemies and they just kill each other. And the great thing about this is it, I guess you would say it scales, even though it technically doesn't scale, but it scales because it takes away the thing that makes the enemies scale. So when you strip away enemies' armor, as they go up in level, of course, they're putting out more damage. So they're putting out more damage, they have no armor to defend them from that damage, and it's just crazy when you fling it out there and enemies are doing so much damage to each other that your little number down at the bottom just goes up, and then all of a sudden it goes 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. because everybody's just killing each other, and it's absolutely freaking fantastic. I do have a little bit of criticism for this one. So as you guys know, this affects 6 enemies at a time. You cannot change how many enemies this affects. But if you toss on an Intensify into your build, you will have 100% power strip, because it starts off at 80 at its base, but you can only affect 6 enemies at once, all right? 6. And the thing is, you can't recast it until all 6 enemies are dead, unless you hold down the button and you see this little thing on your screen tick down, and then it releases those enemies from the psychic bolts. Now, the one thing I do want to put out there, and I wish that they would introduce this, is make it a much faster hold, because that hold is very, very slow. I feel like if you could cut down the timer by half, that would be fantastic. And the only other criticism that I do want to put out there is I wish they came out with better symbols. Like, instead of just a green glow telling us what the enemies are being affected, if they had kind of like little ash marks on top of their head or something around them that made them a lot more visible, because when you are playing and there's just a lot of enemies around, sometimes it's hard to spot that enemy. So having a little mark float above their head or something to kind of indicate which enemies are affected by pacifying bolts a bit better would be absolutely fantastic. But I love the way that this synergizes with the rest of her kit. Then of course they would not touch Chaos, because Chaos is just too fucking amazing. It's just great to see all these enemies are running around and gunning each other down. And then of course, finally, the other change that they made was what do you call this? Absorb now spits back out the damage type that was dealt to you. In all honesty, like, I'm fine with it. I find myself using Assimilate a lot, so it's really a rare day that I'm using Absorb to kind of like do big crazy AoE sweeps. Now if anybody out there isn't like an Assimilate Nyx and uses just the standard Absorb, please chime in down in the comments below and let me know how you feel about Nyx's kit now, like with that Absorb. Does that really change anything for you? Because I really don't feel like that changes much for me. The only thing that it changes for me is occasionally when I'm using Assimilate Nyx, I'll do Pacifying Bolts on a group of enemies, I'll Operator out into the middle of those enemies, and then I will go ahead and Absorb Explode all over them. And I kind of love that, because they're all like vulnerable, and I'm like, I'm getting close to you and I'm exploding on you. It's fantastic. So as you can see, I'm definitely having a lot of fun with Nyx. Is she like, does this make me want to main her? No, but I do feel like I'm enjoying myself a lot more with her than I was before. So hopefully those are my current feelings for these reworks. I'm really crossing my fingers that they make some changes that they need to make. But I do feel like Nyx is coming out pretty strong, and what's her name? Well, hopefully we'll see her again someday. I don't know when, how, or where, but I know that DE is always good about taking feedback, and hopefully they take this. So that about does it for me for now, and the air conditioner just kicked on, so it's kicking me out. So as always, love somebody, hurt nobody, and touch your body. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye!